Let's give a huge conference welcome to Dame Cressida Dick.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Shamina, for that welcome. And first of all, I'm delighted to be here. And many congratulations to the organisers of the conference. It looks absolutely brilliant. And a particular congratulations to Paul, wherever he is. Paul, I know this is your last conference and some time to go, but again, a sparkling conference and typical of the leadership, thoughtful, calm, sensible, and strong that you have shown throughout your time leading the association. So thank you for everything you have done, Paul, genuinely. And thank you for your friendship to so many people in this room and well beyond. So I was lucky last week to be out and about a lot. I was briefly with our very courageous colleagues in Northern Ireland, and I was also out in London on patrol on a number of occasions in the Northwest and the West. I was visiting my teams on the streets, meeting partners and the public in East London as well, more centrally. I had briefings with constables and sergeants and staff involved in surveillance, in undercover policing, source handling, operational technology, homicide, stopping violence against women and girls. I could go on. But what I found were fantastic, highly motivated, diverse, capable, creative, full of ideas, determined colleagues, and members of the public on the street and in meetings who are interested in policing, who care about policing, many of whom want to get involved in policing, who want us, yes, of course, to be even stronger, to improve. As ever, those experiences last week leave me optimistic. And that optimism is enhanced by what I know about our current achievements and the future opportunities. Not least those in growth and in technology. And of course there are challenges, and they will be a theme, I know, of this morning and throughout this afternoon. But I'm optimistic. And that sense of optimism has, of course, been enhanced by what I've seen during the dreadful pandemic. The quiet bravery of police officers and staff and the exceptional leadership shown by superintendents up and down the country. You and they have been getting on with the job. That's what you do. And you've been putting yourselves and everyone in the service in harm's way to keep the public safe. Because while many of the country, much of the country, most of the country rightly stayed at home to help slow the pandemic, police people and our colleagues in the emergency services, the NHS, of course, the caring services, and those who keep the lights on, they were all out there. We were facing the COVID risk. Our frontline officers, more than most, every day, carrying out their duty. Not prioritised for vaccination, but keeping going. Not missing a beat or an opportunity to disrupt or prevent crimes in lockdown. Staying visible, helping people understand the restrictions. Stepping in to drive ambulances. In the Met and elsewhere, volunteering for our mixed profession body recovery teams. A dreadful task, going into people's homes at the most difficult time one can imagine, seeing firsthand COVID and all it could do in the early days. Officers in the Met and in all your forces had to understand and implement legislation days, sometimes hours before it came into force. and before the guidance to navigate the legislation had even been produced. I know Sir Tom has touched on this. They walked a fine line between ensuring the law was being enforced and maintaining the confidence of every community, understanding that so many people had had their lives upended. And when we look back on the pandemic, when we do have that perspective, when it finally ends, I'm sure we will see it as one of the defining moments in the history of policing. Less dramatic, perhaps, than policing during the Second World War, or even so topical, policing terrorism immediately following 9/11, but so memorable nonetheless for the bravery, the calmness, the determination police colleagues have shown throughout. And for all you have done in the past year and a half as leaders of the service in this uniquely challenging time, I want to say, well done and thank you. To you, of course, your teams and your superintendent colleagues who are not here today. I know the impact you have made in keeping the UK's streets and homes safe. I know the weight you have carried, I think I do, as a result. The worry, the concern, the responsibility. As ever in policing, we just get on with it. We get the job done because it matters. We join this profession to help people and to be part of a team, but it doesn't make it easy. Let's not underestimate how challenging the last 18 months have been. And of course, we haven't got everything right. We've learned, we're professionals, we've made improvements. And throughout, I believe we have done our duty with honour, with courage and compassion. So again, thank you. Thank you for your sacrifices, your balancing acts, you, superintendents, keeping going and keeping others going. You all give me great hope. The leaders of today and the leaders of tomorrow, the leaders for the future. And so I'm going to talk today a little bit about why what we have achieved together holds us in such good stead for the future. We've been innovative in the face of challenge. We've been there for each other when we have sometimes doubted ourselves, faced with the knee-jerk rush to judgment we see all too often. We have taken on new and difficult challenges, and we have delivered real results. I'll speak about results in the Met over the last year and a half, but you will all have similar experiences. Between February 2020 and August 2021, in daily business, the Met recorded 1.2 million notifiable offences, dealt with over 63,000 missing people, made over 225,000 arrests. Bearing down on violence, we have reduced the number of knife victims under 25, my key metric for London, by 23% since December 2019. And we've increased the sanction detection rate for knife crime by nearly 50%. The first 6 months of this year were the lowest for lethal barreled discharges, shootings, in 10 years. And we have the highest detection rate for that crime and for homicide I have known. Homicide is also down. We have seized record amounts of cash, drugs and firearms from vicious, ruthless criminals. With Home Office funding, in 1 year only, Operation Orochi led to 245 suspected county line holders being charged and 260 county lines closed in 2020 to 21. And I'll come back to Orochi in a minute. Funded through the first year of growth in the government's Officer Uplift programme, the Met created predatory offender units with 108 posts across London to carry out proactive operations against high harm offenders who target women and girls in particular. Since launching in November last year, they've arrested over 2,000 suspects. These are important results, and I could give you many more. But we all know we must do even more to improve our sanction detection rates, to bring more people to justice, and to improve further how we, alongside the wider criminal justice system, handle, investigate, and prosecute cases of rape and serious sexual assault, well, all sexual assault. There is more to do, but what I saw on my visit last week and see every day is a wholehearted commitment of colleagues to do more. When COVID struck, over 100 former Met officers returned from retirement to help out. Some of them were specials. Officers helped other agencies, as you well know, with their roles in so many ways. I've talked about the ambulances. Right now I have another 70 officers driving London's ambulances because they are in such severe difficulties. Sadly, we lost 9 colleagues during COVID and from COVID. And I know many of you here will have lost colleagues and indeed loved ones as well. I actually, as possibly one of the longest in the tooth in the room, but maybe you would join me, expected to see officers bravely taking on these new challenges to respond and fight crime and support their communities in the way they have done for decades. What I saw is what I know, a fine police service full of great people showing endless compassion, integrity, professionalism, and courage. What I probably did not expect to see is some of the aggression we have seen against officers as they go about their duties. Despite some of the vitriol and viral videos, trust overall in police officers remains high. A recent Veracity, I'm sure you know what that word means, index on trust puts us up there with care home workers and, possibly in a sign of the times, doing what they say they're going to do, often leading to trust, home delivery drivers. Not quite as high as nurses and doctors, but the index showed police are more than 4 times as trusted as some of those in the index who vocally question confidence in the police. Unfortunately, however, I do think we're seeing some decline in the level of benefit of the doubt being shown by some to ordinary men and women who do extraordinary things, not just in the police, but more broadly. We are perhaps caught in a broader polarisation of views in some parts of society. I'm very clear, I will not tolerate abuse of officers, or indeed anyone, but in particular those who serve the public. And when we know of such abuse, we will deal with it, if we can on the day, and if not, then in retrospect. People are quick to judge and comment on our actions, often without the detail or the facts to support their argument. As you know, and perhaps 'twas ever thus, we are caught between cries of why aren't the police doing anything, and why are the police enforcing so hard, why aren't they using more discretion? We are often, in our role, caught in the middle. And those cries frequently come on the same events or incidents, just from different perspectives. It's frustrating, and when it is extremely polarised and unfair, very frustrating. But I don't believe it's the majority view. Wherever I go in London, and I'm sure it's the same across the UK, I see the public supporting their officers and what they're doing. If you live on social media, you may know I don't. I'm a bit of a dinosaur, actually, in some respects, although I've been told to say that I know my hashtag from my handle. You would see a very, very different picture. Snapshots on social media that I don't think reflect the reality of what you all do day in, day out, night in, night out, throughout the week, at weekends, to keep people safe, to tackle crime, to prevent harm. In the rush to judge, I would encourage everyone to consider our women and men who put themselves in harm's way to protect others, who have to make split-second decisions that can be scrutinised for months and years afterwards. I've lost count of the number of officers I have visited in hospitals or at home who have been badly beaten or abused by members of the public just for doing their jobs. This time last year, in 1 week, of course, you know, we had the tragic murder of Matt Ratana. Matt's awful killing sent shockwaves throughout the Met and colleagues across the country and much beyond. He left a powerful legacy. But in that same week, in the Met, thankfully, a very unusual incident, but we had 11 officers injured on a midweek Wednesday afternoon when they were sprayed with sulfuric acid as they entered a building in Barnet to execute a warrant. Thankfully, I've met them more than once since, and they're okay. And of course, the suspects were charged and remanded in custody. Violence, it does seem, towards officers has become more common, somehow unimaginably more accepted. Last summer, you will remember, in July, it is hard to remember what we were all doing last year, but unlicensed music events, not just in London, but certainly in London, persistently taking place across the capital. One Friday night, we had 30, 60 on the day after. We were able to stop the majority of them before they got started and without incident, because they are associated too often with gun crime, knife crime, and serious assaults. But the behaviour towards my officers appalled me. We had bricks and other missiles thrown at them. These were illegal gatherings. They posed a risk to public health. We dispersed them as quickly as we could, and we exploited all our intelligence opportunities and powers as well as we knew how. But those officers didn't join the job to be abused. They joined to serve the public. And frankly, I could understand why they might be jaded by that experience. I'm sure you know that certainly for the Met, assaults against police officers went up 24% between 2019-20 and 2020-21. That's over 1,500 more offences. In June 2020, we saw a rise of 344 offences, nearly 70% year on year. And it's no coincidence that between the lockdowns of 2020, from May through to August, we saw multiple summer protests, in some of which officers sustained attacks at an increased level throughout the period. On average, about 20 Met officers or staff are assaulted every day. About half of those are injured. A further 5 every day are the victim of hate abuse based on disability, homophobia, race, religion, or transphobia. I have no doubt the actual number of assaults and abuse, of course, is far greater. And although we have improved our reporting, I know it's still underreported by officers. They do a remarkable job, and all we citizens owe them a great deal of gratitude. Over the last 18 months, over 12,000 Met officers and staff have been referred to Operation Hampshire. I think John Apter may be in the room. We're proud of the way we run Hampshire in London. Could be even better. It's our way of supporting officers and staff who've been assaulted or abused. And of course, we borrowed it with pride from our colleagues in Hampshire, and I believe it is now being adopted across the country. So that's about 690 officers or staff every month in Hampshire. And since June last year, we've included hate abuse, an average of about 170 a month. It's not okay, it's not acceptable. Many of these assaults, as I've hinted, happen when we are policing public order events, protests, crowd gatherings, planned events. I feel lucky to have some of the very best and most experienced public order commanders in the world in the Met, some in this room, and I know, of course, there are many others in other UK forces too. You don't need me to tell you how much judgment and professionalism is required in public order policing. To the average person, looking perhaps occasionally at a snapshot, the way we do it in this country can look messy. We get up close and personal. We don't use water cannon and other standoff, huge shows or actuality of force. And my commanders are balancing so many factors: the complex law and different people's rights, the crowd dynamics, changing moods, public safety, opposing or competing groups, officer safety, and increasingly the presence of cowardly, vicious thugs mingling in peaceful crowds that include children. You often have imperfect intelligence, inevitably, and challenging timeframes, and you have to make decisions. What the public, the media, the politicians see is often the edited highlights. Obviously, it's the edited highlights, while you guys are living the full-length movie. And the critics seem sadly increasingly politicized, forgetting all too easily when it suits them that we must be impartial, and we are operationally independent. Public order policing has been relentless in the last 18 months in London in its demands. Currently, we have the Desai conference, and very, very near in our memory is the latest 2 weeks of Extinction Rebellion in London, and of course, the events yesterday on the M25. But let's remember also the countless protests against vaccinations, on and on and on, against government policy in general, the huge Black Lives Matter protests and far-right protests, the appallingly titled Kill the Bill protests, the tensions as a result of events in Israel and Palestine. I could go on a long time. On average, we have deployed 25 PSUs, that's 450 officers, on average every weekend to keep the peace. On our most stretched days, between 35 and 100 PSUs, plus all the specialists, plus the planning teams, the command team, the coordination teams. People working hugely scrutinised, under massive pressure, doing a very difficult and sometimes dangerous job. I'm very, very proud of the policing operations during this period. I believe they've been firm, they've been fair, and where necessary, direct. None of this is easy, none of it is without risk, none of it is without complexity. And policing, of course, as we all know, is by public consent. General public consent in this country, and we're proud of that. And it's right that there's a public conversation that shapes the parameters of our society and the legislative framework within which the police operate. But policing is also about facts, establishing them and not racing to a determination. We believe in evidence, and we have to give accurate facts and evidence to the public and to the courts and to others. In recent months, far too regularly, we have seen quick judgment of the actions of individual officers based on a viral clip, a section of footage showing part of an incident, or second-hand information before the full situation can possibly be known. And rushing to such judgments is dangerous. It undermines the legitimacy of policing, and it makes officers feel they need to think twice, or maybe not even volunteer for the role. They're trained to make split-second decisions, nowadays usually having to do so whilst being filmed constantly and absolutely, totally, of course, quite properly accountable. And here I'm going to quote Sir Tom in his quite well-publicised report about the Met after one particular public order event earlier this year. It is one thing to recognise that scenes can be worrying or upsetting, but it is another to jump to conclusions and in so doing undermine public confidence in policing based on very little, I think he said limited, evidence. As HMIC FRS concluded, to do so shows a distinct lack of respect for public servants facing a sensitive and complex situation. I agree wholeheartedly. This is particularly undermining when it comes from people in public life, people who ought to understand some at least of the complexity and the dangers of jumping to erroneous conclusions. But I also recognise, I'm sure you all do too, that we've got work to do here. We can explain ourselves more, what we're doing and why we do it. We are working hard with our communities and stakeholders to be as transparent as possible, to show them what we do in every way imaginable, including inviting them in to see all our operations, joining us on patrol, being involved in decision-making and training our recruits. I could go on. We work in the most scrutinised police service in the world, I believe. Rightly so. That's a strength. We don't shirk from those responsibilities to explain our actions. But as leaders, we need to do more to explain the work of our officers and staff, to defend their actions, and to help the public discourse. And I think we do need, occasionally, to remind others that it is easy to rush to a judgment, especially in hindsight. It's difficult to make split-second decisions in the heat of the moment and then have them analysed in fast time and dissected by those who have not been there themselves. We're living, I know, I don't want to sound as Sir Tom, I think, thought we might, like Canute. We're living in an age of immediacy, an age of outrage, a time when everyone has to have an opinion straight away about whether something is good or bad, right or wrong. But sometimes, call me old-fashioned, sometimes things need more time. You have to establish the facts. We have to remain in line with the law. I can think of numerous times in the last 12 months where public order commanders have had to make quick but careful decisions that have been scrutinised for days, if not weeks afterwards. And of course, when judicial review or other court proceedings follow, sometimes years afterwards. Rushing to judgment too quickly ups the stakes, increases tension. So often with only half the picture, a quarter of the picture, a tenth of the picture available. But perhaps, and I hope I'm not labouring the point, more dangerously, it impacts the legitimacy of the police in the eyes of our public. I accept, of course, that there's a fine line between explaining our actions and being seen as defensive, closed, and unwilling to listen or learn. And I am sure there is more we can do to show ourselves for what we are, not defensive, not closed, very willing to learn. I have always believed, and will continue to believe, scrutiny is good. We welcome it, we need it. It's the foundation of policing in our democracy. And over the last year and a half, we have learned a lot from it. For example, there's a huge programme of work going on in the Met to respond to the issues raised by the death of George Floyd. And I know that race and diversity and equalities and inclusion, again, probably thanks to you, Paul, is an important theme, a very important theme of this conference. Following the appalling murder of Sarah Everard, we have redoubled even more our efforts to tackle violence against women and girls. We are maturing further our links with all of London's communities. We understand, for example, that we need to strike a balance between reducing serious violence through stop and search and use of other powers and minimising any erosion of trust, which the use of such powers can sometimes cause. We recognise, of course, that trust in the police is lower in our black communities, and there may be a sense that young black men are targeted by the police. The tragedy and our challenge is that more than two-thirds of the teenagers killed in London this year were black. And we've had, sad to say, 25. We need to do all we can to stop them being murdered while trying to take the community with us. Currently, also utterly tragic, and a stain on our city. 60% of those accused of murder come from London's black communities, and that rises to over 70% in those aged 24 and under. None of this is easy. I've spoken a lot so far about what is increasingly difficult about policing in the modern era, and I know Sir Tom did too, in particular the challenges of a creaking criminal justice system and other public services struggling to bounce back from COVID when faced with more severe demands. But to repeat, I'm hopeful, I'm positive, I'm optimistic for the future. For example, technology is changing so fast and gives us enormous opportunities. Whether we're talking about big data, artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, facial recognition, drones, so many opportunities. Of course, we must make sure our use of technology does not erode, but rather enhances public trust. because the public must see us using tech responsibly, within the guidelines, and in a way that they can trust to keep them safe. And we absolutely are using technology at the forefront of helping us catch criminals and prevent crime. Every year, our officers and staff input over 6 terabytes of data. That's about 8,000 physical filing cabinets of paper. That scale can seem insurmountable. And it is a steep mountain at the moment, there's no doubt, the volume and complexity of the data. But we have some great examples, and you all have great examples of using technology to get to the heart of the data that matters most. I mentioned Orochi earlier. Orochi has made the investigation of county lines something traditionally incredibly labour-intensive, slow and expensive, very, very much more efficient and faster. By training officers in the use of CSAS, a cell site mapping tool, we've been able to replace months of surveillance with an analysis of communications data created by a single officer in a matter of days. In a little over 18 months, this relatively small unit of officers has worked in collaboration with most of your forces across the country to deliver staggering results. From November 2019 to August 21, we've closed over 560 lines. We've arrested 1,100 individuals. We've charged 1,700. We have a 99% conviction rate of line holders and huge custodial sentences. And more broadly, we have increased our drug trafficking charges through Orochi and other methods by nearly 50%. And the ability of Orochi to interpret communications data in this way has also assisted in the identification of murder, prevention of tit-for-tat killings far faster than previously possible using traditional investigative techniques. We in the Met and others have also been innovative in acting on the undeniable link between drugs and violence. And we will carry on disrupting the supply of drugs through all routes. This is and will reduce violence in London. We remain, as well as focusing on county lines and lower level supply, focused on disrupting those higher up the chain and responsible for widespread wholesale distribution. County lines, I think, is often seen by some as nothing more than drug dealing. You all know the misery at every part of the chain, and in the county line, perhaps more than most. I'll just give you one example that won't be probably a terrible surprise to many in the room about exploitation of the vulnerable and the success that we're having. In September last year, a vulnerable 15-year-old autistic missing person was trafficked from North London to South Wales to act as a runner. The drugs line directed them between various cuckooed addresses, controlled their activities to such a degree the victim had to ask the controller of the drugs line whenever they wanted food. 3 people were identified as line holders, but perhaps unsurprisingly, the victim was not able to engage with us. So we proceeded with, neither are quite the right words, a victimless or unsupported prosecution for modern-day slavery. 3 people were charged with human trafficking and remanded. 3 further were identified as facilitating the modern-day slavery. A search of their address recovered a pistol, ammunition, and a taser. 5 of the 6 sentenced so far to a total of 44 years imprisonment for human trafficking, conspiracy to supply drugs, crack cocaine and heroin, possession of property, possession of a taser and a firearm. And I could give you endless examples. Another one from last week, huge harm to generations of young people. It's a nasty business, and the wider impact on your communities should not be underestimated. So I'm not going to stop tackling drugs from our end, the supply end, but of course I really welcome the fact that the government is now focusing equally strongly on reducing demand. And we will continue to hone our use of modern technology to tackle that. And you are all experts. I don't want to go on too long, but I have spoken, as long as I've been Commissioner, about the potential for technology. I'm not going to stop now. There have been some other fantastic policing and law enforcement results recently where technology has been crucial. I'm sure you are all aware of the amazing work led by the NCA against the Encro phones. And it is not an exaggeration to say that that is the single most significant set of operations against serious organised criminals in the history of policing. The biggest impact by far we have ever had. In the Met, we've charged 430 odd serious organised criminals, and many have been sentenced already. We've seized £15 million in cash and over a tonne of cocaine. We've seized 44 guns in that set of operations alone. And it has been significantly more effective and efficient as a result of our intelligence capabilities, not just the fantastic high-end capability used by the NCA and others, but we can now search millions of lines of data in a few seconds. It would have taken months and months and months if it was done manually. Multiple analysts can conduct multiple inquiries in a matter of seconds, allowing us to consolidate different data types. Perhaps belatedly, and I know Sir Tom again has been quite strong on where we're not with technology and policing, but my goodness, we've come a long way in the last few years. We're now investing really heavily in retrospective facial recognition technology. We assess that this will lead to an upturn in positive identification of matches from 5 a month to probably 600 a month using the new technology. Whereas historically it's probably taken about 10 days to manually identify a subject of interest from an image, using a range of sometimes very intrusive and costly methods, using the new technology, the timescale will be reduced to as little as 10 minutes, with no other supporting resources required. So we need help with this, of course we do, from the tech companies and from the government and from others. We need the Home Office programmes to succeed, NLEDs, the Emergency Services Network, the National ANPR services, and there's more we need to succeed. Bearing down on violence, in particular knife crime, will, I believe, remain the #1 priority in London as I am Commissioner. We will continue to use every tactic and technique we can to prevent any more young people becoming victims. And I know that the police can't do that alone. That's why we need to work with all our partners, with local and central government, with all in society, working together to tackle violence. The uplift in officer numbers has, of course, been very welcome. We're feeling it. I'm sure all of you are too. An even greater uplift would be even more welcome. That would include both officers and police staff, for example, our forensic scientists, our call handlers, our intelligence staff. We are getting as many new officers through the doors of Hendon as we can, and it's a tribute to everybody in policing that we have matched that uplift. The people who are coming in are truly fantastic. I meet so many of them, but we could, of course, go even further. And for all the police officers who continue to put themselves in harm's way, who have served the public loyally and steadfastly throughout the pandemic, who have been injured, assaulted, or abused, for all the police officers who wake up each day or get ready each night to protect people, to save lives, to prevent crime, to tackle perpetrators, not knowing what the day will hold, and for their families, for all of you, I do believe the police deserve a pay rise. And they deserve a fair system for calculating it, one in which people who cannot withdraw labour or work to rule can have confidence. And I believe the public support us. In the latest public attitude survey in London, despite what you might read, only 9% said they don't trust their police service. Confidence remains high, despite the challenges, despite the things we wish hadn't happened in the last year. In the Met, there are currently 24,000 odd citizens in policing. We're aiming for 30,000 volunteers by March 22. People who, in a similar but different way to our valued specials, give up their time to serve with the police and save others. The people who have been coming forward to do this in record numbers during the pandemic and staying with us represent their communities. At least half of them are women. At least 40% identify as what we used to call Black, Asian, or minority ethnic. We know we're not there yet, but the Met and policing more broadly is making progress. Everything I know and see shows that confidence and trust in policing is higher than some, mostly on Twitter, would believe. To conclude, and I promise you I am concluding, I want to take a moment to look forward. In 2029, the Met will be 200 years old. Someone, by then I absolutely promise you it won't be me, will be standing here speaking to your successors and colleagues, and some of you, perhaps. I am confident that we will be even closer then to being the most trusted police service in the world. I know there will be challenges then, as there are now, but you all will have contributed to making the police service of 2029 even better than it is today. Well-led, well-equipped, well-supported. It will be delivering even stronger results in tackling and preventing crime. It will be more personal and responsive. It will be even more diverse. It will have better, sustained engagement with its communities. It will be just as, or maybe even more, scrutinised. But I pray with more constructive understanding. Dare I say, fewer fair-weather friends, properly resourced, and with long-term financial settlements. As I was writing that last bit, I wrote pig flying past. Just the last bit. It will have a clear purpose in a wider system of partners working to the same goal. It will use the best of technology wisely and fairly to keep people safe. And policing will be made up of people like all of you and your colleagues, with very traditional values, committed as ever to the job, to saving lives, to preventing harm, to tackling crime, and to keeping the peace. Thank you very much.
The applause says it all, but there are lots of questions. So I know we've got just over a quarter of an hour, so I'll rattle through them if that's all right, Commissioner. And we'll start with the most popular ones, which are, well, the first one is scrutiny of policing by the public, by media and politicians seems to have been extraordinary, something you did speak about. As Commissioner, though, how do you cope?
How do I cope?
And I guess there's a plea in there for how should everybody cope.
Goodness me, I don't think this is about, I really don't think this is about me at all. But I suppose I've said some things in the speech. I think we should hang on to the fact that the vast majority of the public do support us, that we have good values in our people, that our people are very capable, and that usually the truth will out, and when it does, people can see that either there's two sides to the question, or indeed that the officers were absolutely right in the first place. This is a gender-specific answer. Stand by.
Okay.
Some will get this, some won't. A friend of mine used to answer this question: how do you cope with all the scrutiny? By saying, touche éclat. A little ripple from a few older ladies. Doesn't mean anything to most of you. Anyway, I haven't got it on today. I didn't have time.
Me either.
As you can see.
I know what you mean.
Actually, when I went to my last job, sorry, I'm not trying to play for time, but when I went to my last job after I'd been there about a year in the Foreign Office, somebody said to me, "You look like you've had a spa treatment." I'm busy not looking at how I look on the screen now. But I and all of you, I believe in the job and I enjoy the job. And what it means is one has to try to keep one's own personal standards up. It means one has to keep very grounded. It means one has to not take oneself too seriously. And it means, on occasion, however annoying it is, listening to the criticism, because within all those critics, and certainly within all the scrutiny, there's often an uncomfortable truth. And you have to respond to it.
Thank you. That is a very dignified reply. I'm going to go on to the next question, which is about the government indicating performance targets that are going to be introduced to reflect their investment of the 20,000 officers. However, there doesn't appear to be any acknowledgement of the huge demand that mental health places on the service, in addition to those officers who are perhaps acting as part of the ambulance service, which you mentioned as well. And that takes its toll on officers and it takes them away from meeting those performance targets. So, is that message getting through to the politicians, and are they listening to you?
I think broadly, yes. People generally, obviously, have recognised that mental ill health is a big issue in society and a big issue in certain professions and a big issue in policing. And I think that is reflected in the understanding, it's my personal view, of our politicians and people who hold us to account. If I zone into the London effect, I'm sure it's not enough for many colleagues, but we have invested hugely in well-being over the last 3 years, and in terms of leadership, in terms of focus, and in terms of understanding and skills, and in cash. Yeah. And that is very important. And getting the debate and the conversation going, and doing everything we can to prevent things, spiralling or getting worse, I think has had an impact, and I can see it in our regular staff survey results. I have been thoroughly supported in that application of the funding by the Mayor of London. It would be hard for him to, I think, say otherwise, but he certainly said, no, that's a good idea. And every £1 million I spend on that, obviously I'm not spending it on nicking today's criminal, but I'm trying to help look after our people. So I think it is broadly understood. We can always think of more things that one might want in a performance framework, but I do believe, wherever it comes from, and all of you manage performance in your own frameworks, but I do believe that too many things to be sort of held to account on at the top level can be very confusing and indeed sometimes counterproductive. So I would rather let my staff survey speak for itself. Yeah. I would rather know when I go and see my people that they're saying they can see the differences in our wellbeing services, and I would love to be able to see this more, hear them say to me, tell you what, I can see how you're trying not to, as I always say, thrash the Met. They are overworking. There is no doubt about that. Yeah. I talked about public order. Yes. My public order teams have been overworking. I don't like it. And I would love to be able to just scale that back in the months to come. Yeah,
and it is cumulative, isn't it? Because this time last year for this conference, that was the single issue that stood out: mental health and tiredness amongst the staff, certainly in the survey. I just wondered, at this point, does anybody want to ask a question directly? If not, I'm going to continue with the ones that we've got here. Yeah, we've got a couple. So if that's all right,
sure,
Commissioner, we'll take those.
Hi, Lizzie Dearden from The Independent. Just a topical one on public order. The PCSC bill is in the Lords today, and I was wondering whether you shared some concerns voiced by officers in this room earlier today that the public order provisions may bring protesters in increased conflict with the police, and that the Home Secretary's role in defining serious disruption may lead to police being seen as an arm of the state.
So I've said already at some length, public order policing is fiendishly complex. It's important that we have a strong and effective legal framework. Colleagues may know that goodness me, I can't even remember when it was, but after the large first XR protest, I wrote to the government and we asked for about 20 changes in the law that would help us. And some of those fell away and others became consolidated, and some of them are in this piece of legislation. Whatever you do, actually, both legally and sometimes in practice, may be too much for some and not enough for others. That's in the nature of it. I think we should recognise that the lawmakers have the role of making the law, and we have to then respect the law, and we have to work with the law, and we have to interpret the law in a way which is in tune with our values and our tradition of policing in this country. And I'm sure we will.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Any more questions from the floor? Okay, can I carry on with the ones that we've got in? And this one is, do you support police forces being more proactive in releasing body-worn video when legally able to do so to combat trial by media, especially when clips of video are posted of police officers with little or no context? And we've seen that, haven't we, a lot?
Yeah, absolutely. In principle, I absolutely do. And I think you will have seen, for example, during the recent XR protests, the Met were pretty proactive about our communication strategy, using every modern method you can think of, and using imagery as much as words, and not, no disrespect, relying on traditional media to get the message across, and putting up sort of frequently asked questions. Why aren't you using water cannon? Why aren't you letting them just sit there forever? You know, ourselves. But imagery, because that's the modern world. So in principle, I absolutely do. Of course, I also, in principle, want misunderstandings or erroneous judgments of how my officers have done their work to be dispelled as quickly as possible. But the key words here, I think, are within the law and also in a way that is practical. And it's sometimes easier said than done. I wish we could speed it up more often. And I don't have any hesitation in saying that. But we must stick to, I believe, I don't want to sort of sound preachy, but we must stick to what I said earlier on. We are the police. We have to stick to the facts. We have to respect any investigation or due process that may be taking place. And we must not give, which is all too easy with imagery, biased or kind of clips that actually only tell a part of the story. And often our story is a very long and complex one. And so although it might be, it might look like a sort of game of cards, well, they've put up that which is edited, unfair, clipped, inappropriate. Right, we're going to slap that down there. Well, actually, sometimes we need to look at the whole, and not least because it's about to be investigated, perhaps, by the IOPC or others. So in principle, I want to move faster and further towards that.
Okay.
And with good taste. I'm sorry to say, in America and many other places, you see law enforcement organisations putting out, it's an old-fashioned concept again, but putting out videos that I think are utterly, totally and completely unacceptable and would offend our public hugely and our staff as well.
Yeah, okay, understand. Any more questions at this point? Nope, okay. I'm going to carry on then. Commissioner, we've got a nice one for you. Many congratulations on another 2 years as Commissioner of the Met. What are you hoping to achieve in that time?
So I'm very excited about this. I think I've said some things about why I'm positive and optimistic for the future. Very specifically in the Met, we are having great results against reducing violence, and that will continue. We will be investing more in our town centres and in some of the wards where we have, lowest confidence or trust and high violence. So we'll have more officers on the street in the next year, and I know that will both reassure, improve confidence, and continue to reduce crime, particularly violent crime. I'm very excited about, it's niche, I know, but I'm very excited about the Counter-Terrorism Operations Centre, which is already partially in operation and will be absolutely magnificent multi-agency effort, or sort of building technology and way of working which will protect the country for the next 10 or 15 years, well ahead of so many other nations in the world. So I'm very excited about that. I'm excited actually about our new recruits and growth and the diversity that we will be achieving. I am actually excited also to think that with a fair wind, we will have public confidence even higher in 2.5 years than it is now.
Okay, so you're going to be busy.
Yeah, we're busy.
Carry on being busy,
busy.
yes.
Yeah.
We've got another question now, which is what the Met does and how they are perceived affects every single force across England and Wales. A key example of this is stop and search of black men in London, which influences the views of UK policing as a whole. What can you do to support the other 42 in respect to public confidence and indeed police legitimacy?
Goodness, there's a sort of PhD in that question.
There is. I didn't write it. It's a good one.
Really good question. So I think what we are seeing is that, and perhaps the most telling example of this is the awful killing of George Floyd and then the events afterwards, which is that to some people, the police are the police are the police.
Yeah.
And the feds in America are the same as in Malaysia or Amsterdam or London or Nottingham. That's what some people will see. That's how police behave. And that's the impact that police can have. And I think we have to live with that as a reality, in a sense. I spoke to colleagues all around the world quite a lot after those events and continue to do so today. And trust, certainly in some communities, dropped for, whether you're talking about the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, latterly the Australian Police, the Dutch, the Danes, the Italians. Policing took a tremendous hit at that point. And then that plays into what the Met does well, reflects well on the UK, and what the Met, as 25% plus of policing in our capital city, with the challenges that we have, particularly but not exclusively in public order and all our other roles, counter-terrorism and protecting Her Majesty the Queen and so forth, if it doesn't go so well or is criticised, I appreciate that can have an impact as well. So I think for me this brings us back to local engagement. We're a big service, but if I was leading, if I was a superintendent in wherever, Wiltshire, or the chief constable there, I would be not saying, well, that's the Met and it's all different here, but I would be constantly out there explaining what happens here and how we police here and what the demographics of the communities are here and why stop and search is an important power to be used appropriately, professionally, legitimately. But I would be trying to make some of these gradations. I'd be trying to make those clear. And people will, it's a controversial and contested area. Of course it is. And for, when I meet mums who've had their boy stabbed or worse, killed, and they say to me, use stop and search, please use it more. When I walk about the streets of, so many of our areas of London that are afflicted by knife crime, and I hear people saying, we want to see more officers, number one. Everybody wants more officers, just about. Nobody wants less. And then secondly, we do want you using your powers, but please make sure you use them professionally, kindly, compassionately, carefully. I say that's exactly what we're trying to do. And we can get better, and we can improve people's understanding, improve people's trust in us, and we can help our officers deal with difficult conflicts even better than we currently do. And that's why we're bringing in tons of community people to help us with our training. But I don't think, as Commissioner of the Met, I can spend the majority of my time thinking, what impact is this going to have in another force? I need to concentrate on my service, but keep talking to colleagues up and down the country, because if I use clumsy language or I am not understanding the challenges that the Met's posture is creating, or the opportunities that the Met's, like with Orochi, the Met's posture is creating, then I'm obviously being dumb, and I don't want to do that. Okay. I think we have to leave it there because we've got a flashing red light. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a huge round of applause, please, to Dame Cressida.